A freezing winter night, lights blazing on the facade of Carnegie Hall, the place where legendary symphonies have echoed. The place where only the wealthy and the powerful once strode across its stage. Tonight, the auditorium is packed. They have come to enjoy Western classical music and to witness Edward Whitmore, the 45-year-old master violinist whom the press hails as the golden hand of the century. He is famous for his flawless technique, but no one forgets his arrogance or that half smile that makes others feel small. In the back row, dwarfed by elegant evening wear, is a skinny, out-of-place young man. 17-year-old Samuel Carter wears a worn-out old jacket, his eyes squinting as if trying to focus on the stage lights. In his hands, a cheap, dented, beaten violin case. Next to Samuel is his public school teacher, the only person brave enough to bring him here, to a place that was never meant for a poor black kid. While the audience murmurs, Edward catches sight of the boy. He halts, his gaze glides over the ugly case. Then he sneers. Suddenly, in a mocking voice blasting through the microphone, Edward says, "Oh, hey there, kid, what is that? A violin? Looks like a toy. Why don't you bring that thing up here and play us a few notes?" Just for fun, the audience bursts into laughter. Their laughter blends mockery with amused relish at the unexpected spectacle. Samuel stands frozen, his knuckles grip the case so tightly they turn pale. No one knows how fast his heart is pounding inside his chest. The audience leans forward, not to hear music, but to watch a clumsy black boy become the joke in this temple of elitist classical music. The air feels heavy, the cold from outside seems to seep into the auditorium, and then, all eyes are on Samuel. Samuel Carter was born in a poor labor neighborhood in the south of the city. His father died early in a construction accident, leaving his single mother, a hotel maid, struggling to provide each meal. In their cramped, tiny room, with the noise of traffic and the musty smell from cracked walls, Samuel grew up as his vision gradually faded. He was 9 when doctors diagnosed a hereditary disease that blurred his sight more each day. Now he can barely see the silhouette of someone standing in front of him. For a child, that is a cruel sentence, but instead of giving in, Samuel found salvation in an old violin a kind neighbor gave him. Its varnish was peeling, its strings rusty, but to him, it was a treasure. Day after day, Samuel practiced relentlessly. 8, 9, sometimes 10 hours. His fingertips grew calloused, his shoulders ached, but he never gave up. Each note was like a small flame illuminating the darkness that stole his sight. For Samuel, music was not just a hobby, it was the only way to prove he had worth, to exist as a whole person. What about Edward Whitmore? His story is entirely different. Born into a high society family, with parents who were art patrons, Edward was handed violins worth hundreds of thousands of dollars from a young age. He studied with the best teachers and performed in prestigious halls. He was the violin prodigy, a title attached to him since he was 10. But after the spotlight faded, critics whispered a different truth. Edward's playing is perfect, but hollow. His music is numbers, not heart's blood. On the stage tonight, fate puts 2 opposite souls face to face. On one side, the arrogant prodigy raised in velvet, believing art is a privilege for the elite. On the other, the frail black young man who clings to his dream of music as a life raft in the pitch-black void. They differ not only in technique, but in the soul they pour into every strain. Edward does not waste any time flaunting his superiority. He steps forward into a spotlight, raising his gleaming Stradivarius violin, then lifts his chin. "Kid, I will show you what a real performance looks like." His fingers fly over the fingerboard. The bow unleashes a cascade of notes from Paganini's Violin Concerto No. 1, one of the most difficult works ever written for violin. The sound is fast, powerful, technically dazzling. The audience gasps and applauds, many nodding appreciatively at the familiar virtuosity of Edward. As the final note fades, he turns, a smug smile curling his lips. "Bet all you can play is Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, right?" The audience erupts in laughter. Their eyes shift toward Samuel, expecting him to melt or run off. But Samuel clutches his violin tighter in a voice low and soft, almost a whisper, he says, "If I may, I would like to try Bach's Chaconne." Immediately, the space freezes. Gasps ripple through the audience. The Chaconne, a nearly 15-minute solo violin masterpiece, hailed as the Everest of violin repertoire. Even seasoned professionals hesitate to attempt it. Edward laughs heartily, applauding as if Samuel's request were reckless. Chaconne, the kid not even old enough to enter a bar, wants to tackle Bach. That's suicide. Audience members shake their heads. Some snicker, others look at Samuel with pity. But then, a few faces fall silent, because the boy is not trembling. His sight may be hazy, but his gaze is remarkably calm. That silent confidence makes some in the room wonder. Were they about to witness something beyond imagination? Edward raised his violin once more, stepping to the edge of the stage as if to assert his crown. His bow glided across the notes of the Chaconne, each one so precise it left no room for criticism. The rapid runs, the dense chords, each note burst forth like a perfectly tuned machine. The audience applauded, but it was polite applause. Routine, exactly what one gives a technically correct performance. Nothing more. Samuel sat silently in the back, his eyes half closed. He did not need to see, he only needed to listen. Every note Edward played felt like a dry brick wall, accurate but lifeless, and in his silence, Samuel was carving each note into memory, as though holding a quiet conversation with Bach through the darkness of his vision. When Edward finished, he turned and extended his bow, almost like a challenge. Well then, are you ready to embarrass yourself in front of the entire hall? Samuel slowly stood. He walked toward the stage, gripping his worn violin so tightly that the wood let out a soft creak. Then he lifted his head, his voice clear and unwavering. "Sir, you played every note correctly." But Bach did not just write notes. In the Chaconne, he wrote his grief after losing the woman he loved. That is not written on the sheet, it is written in the heart of the player. The words cut through the air like a silent blade. The room went completely still. A few people in the front rows leaned forward, their faces a mix of surprise and tension. In that moment, Edward hesitated. Even he had never dared to say that out loud. He only knew how to play it right, but had never dared to face the soul of Bach. And the audience, they began to realize a deeper truth. Edward might dominate with technique, but that fragile, nearly blind young man, he was the one carrying the heart of music. Samuel took a deep breath. He rested the old violin on his shoulder and closed his eyes. There was no more laughter, no more whispering, just him, the violin, and the dark. Then the bow met the string. The sound emerged, trembling like a cry buried for years. Each note from his thin, calloused hands was no longer technique, it was a voice. Bach's Chaconne, in his hands, was not a piece of music, it was a confession, a sorrow, a burning hope. At first, the music was heavy, falling like blows into the depths. It told of light fading from his eyes, of nights spent practicing in a dark room, while his mother silently wiped away tears after long, exhausting shifts. Then, gradually, the melody shifted from grief to strength, from despair to defiance. Each note was a step up a steep cliff, a heartbeat refusing to surrender to the shadows. The entire hall fell into breathless silence. The wealthy, the powerful, those who had once mocked him, none dared to breathe too loudly. A few eyes turned red, a few tears fell. They were not hearing Bach anymore. They were hearing the life of the boy standing before them. Edward sat still, his trembling hands clenched tightly. He understood, for the first time in his life. He saw the cruel truth. His technique was a hollow shell. And the boy he tried to turn into a joke had defeated him with nothing but the soul he poured into every note. When the final sound faded into silence, Samuel bowed his head. No pride, no waiting for praise, just the quiet grace of someone who came to speak from the heart. And then, thunderous applause erupted like a storm. The audience rose to their feet as one, clapping until their hands turned red, until the sound shook the walls of Carnegie Hall. In that moment, Samuel Carter, the blind, poor, ridiculed boy, became the brightest star of the night. That night, no one could have imagined the video of Samuel's performance would be shared millions of times on social media. People began calling him by a new name, the Chaconne boy from the darkness. Just 6 months later, a letter from Juilliard arrived at the tiny apartment Samuel shared with his mother. It carried a dreamlike message, a full scholarship, making him the youngest violin student in the conservatory's history. Those very sponsors who had once laughed at him inside Carnegie Hall were now quietly contributing to a new fund to search for and support talent hidden in poor communities. Where other Samuels still practice quietly on broken, second-hand instruments, and Edward Whitmore, the press began to unearth every old review. Empty technique, soulless music. Those words became daggers aimed back at the man once worshipped. He lost many performance contracts, but worse, he lost the respect he thought would last forever. 1 year later, Carnegie Hall lit up once more. This time, Samuel Carter's name appeared on the official program. In a packed auditorium, he stepped forward, the same old violin in hand, the one that had carried him through his darkest days. Before playing, Samuel lifted his head and spoke in a warm, steady voice. Music does not belong to social class, or skin color, or light. Music belongs to any heart that can feel. Then the bow sang again, and the entire hall was carried into a world where there were no boundaries, no color, no wealth, no division. And now, it is your turn. Remember a moment when you witnessed or experienced injustice in art, in education, or in life. Do not stay silent. Share your story in the comments below this video. And if you believe that true talent always rises above prejudice, that music and dreams belong to all of us, subscribe to the channel and help spread this message. Because one Samuel Carter can change a single night, but millions of Samuel Carters can change the world.